Thinking about moving, but afraid of becoming a crime statistic? If you said yes, keep watching. There are thousands of cities and neighborhoods to move to in the United States. About 70% of them would probably be a good option for most of us. But that 30% is where it gets crazy. There are cities in the US with neighborhoods that are so dangerous, they have more shootings than a Rambo double feature. In this video, we're looking at the most dangerous big cities in the US and their worst neighborhoods. If you like this video, let me know in the comments section if you want to see the medium city version. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Houston, Texas. Everything's bigger, including the crime rate. Houston, where the heat is unbearable, the traffic is soul-crushing, and the crime is relentless. It's like someone took all the worst parts of Florida and California and mashed them together under the oppressive Texas sun. Car theft and robberies are so common that it's basically assumed your vehicle will be stripped of parts at some point. Houston's criminals are very efficient. Armed robberies, yeah, they happen at gas stations, restaurants, and sometimes while you're sitting at a red light. That's not even a joke. That happens on a regular basis. I wouldn't say regular basis, but it's happened more than a few times. Then, of course, there's the flooding. Oh, you thought crime was your biggest concern. Nope. Houston floods so often that you'd think the city was built on top of Poseidon's personal grudge. Every time it rains, the entire highway disappears and people are out kayaking in the streets like it's a fun little summer camp they're at. Between crime and natural disasters and unbearable humidity, Houston is basically a survival challenge disguised as a city. The worst neighborhood in Houston, Texas is Sunnyside. Now, I'm going to give you the correct name of these neighborhoods. Locals might have a different name, but I'm using the correct name in case you want to look it up on the map or something like that. As an example, I always thought I grew up in West Torrance, but then when I looked at the map and realized what the city called my neighborhood growing up, it's called Southwood. That explanation will not stop people from leaving comments in the comment section. The violent crime rate in Sunnyside is 189% above the national average. Number 9, Detroit, Michigan, where street cred is earned the hard way. Detroit, the Motor City, home of American muscle cars, abandoned buildings, and an overwhelming sense of nostalgia for better days. The city's crime rate is legendary, making it one of the most statistically dangerous places in America. If you ever want to test out your fight or flight instincts, just take a wrong turn outside of downtown after sunset. Spoiler alert, you're going to need both flight and fight. Let's not ignore the abandoned buildings, which are perfect for urban explorers and horror movie sets. Detroit is basically a giant post-apocalyptic amusement park. Instead of zombies, it's filled with copper thieves and stray dogs that will attack you. And the infrastructure? Let's just say potholes are so deep, they might actually qualify as an emergency escape tunnel in case of a disaster. But the real kicker? The weather. Detroit's winters make you question if you are actually living in a simulator that is designed for suffering. And the summers are just hot enough to make you forget how miserable the cold was. It's a city where you can get frostbite in February and heat stroke in July while dodging carjackings and wondering if your Uber driver is actually scamming you. The most dangerous neighborhood in Detroit is Belmont. The crime rate in Belmont is, there's like 14,000 crimes for every 100,000 residents. That's each year. You have a 1 in 8 chance of becoming a victim of any type of crime there. And of course, the place is covered in gang activities. The violent crime rate in Belmont is 664% above the national average. Now, one thing I will say, and I always say this about Detroit, their downtown area is turned it around. It's not perfect, but compared to what it was, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, it is doing outstanding. They need to get an award for that. Number 8, St. Louis, Missouri, the city that can't catch a break. St. Louis, home to the Gateway Arch. With a crime rate so high, the city should come with a waiver form before entering. The locals have mastered the art of giving you that look when you say that you're only visiting. It's a mix of pity and confusion, like they're wondering if you lost a bet. The city consistently ranks among the most dangerous places in the country, with sky-high rates of violent crime. The phrase wrong place, wrong time applies to most locations after dark, and even some during the daylight. The local news reads like a crime novel, except the plot twists are very predictable. Something got stolen, someone got shot, and the mayor is still pretending to be shocked. And let's not forget the road system, which seems to have been designed as a cruel joke. Between construction zones that never end and highways that seem to lead straight into nowhere, you'll have plenty of time in traffic to listen to an audio book about true crime. If the criminals don't get you, the road rage will. They got a serious problem with that there. The most dangerous neighborhood is Wells Goodfellow. And when I say dangerous, I'm going by statistics, okay? So don't tell me, oh no, this neighborhood's much more dangerous. Well, then have them fix the stats. Wells Goodfellow's violent crime rate is 680% above the national average. That's 96% higher than the rest of St. Louis. Number 7, Baltimore, Maryland, where even the crabs are aggressive. Baltimore has a very interesting nickname. They call it Bodymore. And some people call the entire thing, Baltimore, Maryland, they call it Bodymore Murderland. The city has everything: historic landmarks, a beautiful waterfront, and enough crime to keep at least 3 different true crime podcasts in business. The Inner Harbor might look nice, but you stray too far and suddenly you're starring in your own survival horror movie. The city is infamous for its violent crime rate, and the police department seems to have adopted the best of luck approach to law enforcement. Carjackings and robberies and shootings are just another part of daily life. Then, of course, you have a public transit system which has its own set of dangers. If you need to use it, you're kind of gambling with your life. It's like you flip a coin and see what works out. Will I make it home tonight or no? The worst neighborhood statistically in Baltimore is Middle East. It's the most dangerous neighborhood they got in one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. Luckily for the Middle East neighborhood, they're located near Johns Hopkins Medical Center, one of the best medical centers in the United States. They're probably really good because they get a lot of practice. The violent crime rate in Middle East is 445% above the national average. Number 6, New Orleans. Party hard, but keep your wallet close. New Orleans is a city that runs on music, booze, and crime statistics. The French Quarter may look like a charming photo op, but in reality, it's a pickpocket's paradise and a haven for street hustlers with PhDs in deception. You haven't truly experienced New Orleans until you've been scammed at least twice before breakfast. The city's violent crime rate is enough to make even the most seasoned criminal rethink where they should be working. Murders, carjackings, and armed robberies are so frequent, they practically have a schedule. If you think the police will help you, think again. They're understaffed, underpaid, overwhelmed, and probably dealing with things much worse than your missing purse. Then there's hurricane season, which transformed the city into a water park that nobody asked for. Every summer, residents play a fun little game called, Is This Storm Finally Going to Take Us All Out? And when the floods hit, it gets even uglier. Easily one of the most devastating hurricanes ever. Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans years ago, and to a degree, they haven't fully recovered yet. Hurricane Katrina did a lot of damage throughout the Gulf Coast, but New Orleans took it head on, and it was devastating. If you're too young to remember that, it was back in 2005, in late August. Yeah, it was brutal. The most dangerous neighborhood in New Orleans is Treme, or Treme, it depends on how old you are, I guess. This neighborhood is known for its history with jazz clubs, great music, and historic homes. It's also home to Louis Armstrong Park, the place where jazz music was pretty much invented. The violent crime rate in Treme is 821% above the national average. That's nuts. Number 5, Memphis, Tennessee, where the blues ain't just a music genre. Home of Elvis, barbecue, and enough crime to keep the city's emergency services in a constant state of exhaustion. Tourists come here expecting a charming southern experience, but what they get is an involuntary self-defense course. Sure, Beale Street is great for live music and overpriced drinks, but step one block too far and suddenly you're on an episode of Cops. Car theft, check. Armed robbery, check. Random acts of violence, triple check. Memphis consistently ranks in the top for violent crimes. The police have kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, it's just part of the culture here. The solutions? Locals recommend you mind your business, move fast, and don't look lost. Now this is strange because most downtowns in the United States, they kind of fix them up. Over the last handful of years, downtowns have been the focus of a lot of cities. Make the downtown nice, and then everything else gets better. Few exceptions: Portland and Memphis. Downtown Memphis is one of the most dangerous places in the United States. Their violent crime rate is 890% above the national average. Downtown has problems stemming from poverty, gang activity, and of course every form of trafficking you can think of. Yeah, but that violent crime rate, that's 890% above the national average. That's rough. Number 4, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Breaking Bad wasn't just fiction here. Albuquerque, the city where the desert isn't the only thing trying to kill you. If you thought Breaking Bad exaggerated the crime scene here, I have some bad news for you. It was actually being genuine. Carjackings, violent crime rates, and people making illegal substances, it's very common. It might as well be listed in their tourism brochures. Auto theft is practically a rite of passage in Albuquerque. If you own a car, odds are you'll be using public transportation sooner than expected. People here don't just steal cars, they strip them for parts and then they actually sell them back to unsuspecting owners. It's like an elaborate performance art piece, except you're the unwilling participant. And if you thought the desert landscape was beautiful, just wait till you're stranded in it because someone stole your catalytic converter. Between oppressive heat, rattlesnakes, and general lawlessness, Albuquerque feels like the Wild West, except the sheriffs gave up a long time ago. The most dangerous neighborhood in Albuquerque is called Quigley Park. Now, I'm going to tell you the violent crime stat right now, but the reason I put them at number 4 and not number 1, once you hear the stat, you'll see why. It's because they had a little bit of a uptick over the last 6 months of 2024, but normally their crime rate is about 750% above the national average. But right now, Quigley Park, the violent crime rate is 1,507% above the national average. It's not that big of a place, so it looks way worse than it really is. Now, I'm not saying the place is safe and doesn't have a lot of violent crime. It does. That's just an exaggerated number right now. Number 3, Chicago, Illinois, the windy city where bullets fly faster than the breeze. Chicago is famous for its sports teams, Navy Pier, and the ability to rack up crime statistics that make other cities jealous. While downtown is relatively safe, venture into the wrong neighborhoods and you might find yourself what seems like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. Gun violence in Chicago isn't just a problem. It's a daily event. The city's weekend shooting statistics are reported like sports scores. And the amount of murders is high enough to make you wonder if there's some kind of underground competition going on. The police department, well, let's just say their strategy seems to be, keep it in the south side, we won't bother you too much. Now, I've brought this up before. Chicago has a lot of murders and they got a lot of violent crimes. But since they have so many people, their rate is pretty low and it usually lands them in the mid-20s someplace. Don't get me wrong, they have more murders than any other city in the US, almost every single year. But since crime rates are done by rates, they're never number 1. And if the crime doesn't get you in Chicago, the weather might. Winters in Chicago are straight up hostile. The wind coming off Lake Michigan doesn't just chill you, it attacks you, slapping your soul out of your body. Combine that with an economy that's about as stable as a Jenga tower, and you've got a city that keeps you on your toes year-round. The most violent neighborhood in Chicago is going to be Washington Park. They only have a population of about 13,000, and their violent crime rate is 297% above the rest of Chicago. It's actually 702% above the national average. Number 2, Oakland, California. San Francisco's angry little brother. At least that's what it seems like. Oakland is what happens when a city gets tired of being overshadowed and decides to go on a full crime spree. It's right next to San Francisco, but without the tech bros and absurd housing prices. Actually, they're still pretty absurd compared to the rest of the country, but compared to San Francisco, they're downright reasonable. It is so expensive, most of the criminals can't even afford rent. You gotta come from out of town to commit crimes in Oakland. Carjackings, burglaries, and armed robberies are so common they've practically become part of the local culture. Leave your car unattended for more than 5 minutes? You won't have windows when you get back. Yes, they will break those and take whatever's in the car. And on top of that, if you ever have a delivery delivered to your house from Amazon, yeah, it's not going to be there unless you accept it from the man, and then it's still a maybe. The most dangerous neighborhood in Oakland, California is called Eastmont. This neighborhood has a long history with violent crime. It's actually 139% above Oakland's average, which lands them at 619% above the national average. All right, before we get to number 1, let me know in the comments section, have you ever been in one of these neighborhoods? Do one of you live in these neighborhoods? Let me know what your experience is in the comment section below. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Jackson, Mississippi. The most dangerous city you never thought about. Congratulations, Jackson. You've officially won the title of America's most dangerous city. The reason they're so high is because they have several neighborhoods that are very dangerous. Most of them, one neighborhood might be 500% above the national average, and then the rest are like 200 and 150 and 100% above the national average. Jackson has like 7 neighborhoods that are all 500% above the national average or more. Jackson isn't just dangerous, it's impressively dangerous. Violent crime rates here go through the roof, and the city's murder rate is so high it makes a war zone look peaceful. Police are understaffed, overworked, and probably as scared as everyone else. If you call 911 in Jackson, Mississippi, there's a good chance the operator will just sigh and tell you, "Stay safe out there," and hang up. But wait, it's not just the crime that makes Jackson terrifying. Infrastructure is collapsing, water crises are common, and the roads look like they've been bombed. And basic city services are more of a wish than a reality. If the criminals don't get you, the lack of clean drinking water and functioning hospital system just might. So if you're looking for a place where every day feels like a survival challenge, Jackson is ready to welcome you with open arms. And then those open arms hit you over the head with something and start rifling through your pockets. The most violent neighborhood in Jackson, Mississippi is Maddox Road, and their violent crime rate is 584% above the national average. But like I said, they got number 1 because they have so many neighborhoods that could be considered their most violent. There's just a few points here or there separating them. Alright, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, you probably enjoy one of the 2 videos being suggested right now. Have a great day. Be nice to each other.